Yo, for the big 60,000 subscriber Q&A. You know what? For someone who has to say the word subscriber a lot, I'm really bad at saying the word subscriber. I need to practice. Subscribers. We had a lot of questions about football media, what it's like being a football journalist, how did I get into it, what's it like, how do I build contacts. So that's what this video is about. There are some more sort of random miscellaneous questions. I do want to do those because I find those the most fun maybe, but this is all about being in football media. Please do like and subscribe, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye-bye. Okay, guys, so loads of you asked me about how I started working as a sports journalist. So Sam Findlay, Chicago Gooner, Poserman, Haldir, AI Support. Loads of people basically saying, how did I get my start? So in 2004, I started a blog. Blogs aren't really, there aren't that many blogs anymore, I don't know. But it was sort of the early days of kind of blogging. I think it was with blogspot.com that I started it, gunnerblog.blogspot.com. And it was basically a copycat of Arsblog. Arsblog was someone I knew by then, Andrew, and he had a forum, private forum, where people talked about Arsenal, a message board. And I used to, on that message board, write player ratings every game, rate every player out of 10, and write like a little paragraph about their performance. And people really liked them. And I remember Andrew said to me, like, oh, can I stick these on Arsblog? And I was like, actually, I might do my own website. And I'm going to call it Gunnerblog. And he probably thought, right, we've completely stolen my idea, wholesale. I'm going to sue you. Well, he could have thought that, but actually he didn't. He was very helpful. He gave me a lot of tech support, and he actually hosted the site for a long time. So I started writing about Arsenal. Just my experience of watching the games, going to games, doing these player ratings. And then I started getting interested in transfers as well. And at that time, it was sort of the early days of the transfer industry, media industry, and I speak a bit of French and a bit of Spanish, so I was able to kind of read foreign press and translate and, not break my own news, but kind of bring news from abroad to other people. I remember staying up all night reading Costa Rican newspapers about the imminent arrival of Joel Campbell. Then, the website started to grow, and we started getting offered sort of, I say we, it was a one-man band, it was just me. I started getting offered little opportunities like, oh, you've got a bit of a profile on social media. Could we pay you £50 to write a column for our website and you tweet about it and it brings people into our website? And I was like, I can't believe this. Suddenly I'm getting paid to write, which was amazing. And that kind of grew and grew until eventually, I'm trying to remember exactly the order. I think Bleacher Report, or it was either them or ESPN, basically made me a proposal like that. Do you want to write X number of articles per month and we'll pay you Y per month? And it was completely freelance, completely ad hoc, but I said yes. And I'll be honest, I'm not especially proud of the work that I did, particularly at Bleacher Report, because the way they worked was very search engine optimized. They would basically come up with the headline first and then sort of justify an article to follow it. So occasionally you'd be given like a very sort of outrageous statement, like why Granit Xhaka's going to win the Ballon d'Or, and have to sort of create a logic for it. But I was being paid to write about football, so I jumped at the opportunity. Did that for a while. My work with ESPN was, I had more control, more considered, could kind of write what I wanted. And I think that's what attracted The Athletic in part. So I actually joined The Athletic before they launched in the UK as a freelance writer, just writing the occasional sort of ad hoc column for them. I'd never heard of them, to be honest, but they approached me. I think they probably approached somebody else first. I would imagine, Amy Lawrence or Andrew or someone like that. But they came to me and said, do you want to do this? And the money was much better than I'd ever been accustomed to, although my pay had sort of steadily gone up. Even so, The Athletic was a jump. So I said, sure. And I probably wrote half a dozen things for them over the course of about 6 months, and that was great. But they really liked what I did. So when they launched in the UK, the American side were like, let's keep James, let's bring him on as staff. And I have to be honest, I think the UK operation were a bit like, why? You know, he's a blogger, he's a YouTuber, he's a guy who does stuff on the internet. He hasn't got any sort of journalistic pedigree or credibility, certainly no journalistic training. I never studied journalism, I did an English literature degree. But, you know, and I was nervous to take it on because I was a freelancer. There was a lot of freedom that came with that. I could take on work when I wanted, I could leave it when I wanted. So the idea of being a full-time staff member somewhere, like the Athletic, was worrying for me, and I needed to be sort of persuaded. I sort of went to them and said, listen, you know, like I'm an actor and I do other stuff, and I'm not sure if this is going to be the right fit. Anyway, eventually we came to an agreement and I joined. And I have to say, like, without wishing to blow my own trumpet, the sort of nicest thing about being there is the degree to which I've surprised them. I don't think they anticipated me being able to, basically me being as good as I am, you know, being able to write very well, being able to build a network of contacts to help with breaking news, inside stories. I think they just didn't anticipate someone coming from a kind of online blogging background and being able to do that. But I think it shows, and I hope it shows, that there are lots of transferable skills that apply in journalism. And I'm very grateful to all the people along the journey who ever sort of took a chance on me, you know, from Andrew helping me out with the hosting of Gunner Blog, right up to Alex Kajelski, my editor at The Athletic, agreeing to hire me. But I think it shows that, you know, if you're a smart person, an able person, if you can write, there's always going to be a path for you, potentially. We'll get more into the weeds of it, I'm sure, as more of these questions come up, but I hope that gives you a bit of an overview. LL Shmuel J says, hi James, interested to know if your Arsenal fandom ever conflicts with your career as a journalist. Have there ever been times you haven't reported something, or you've thought about not reporting something because you know it will negatively impact the club? I understand you've got to hold the club to account when they're doing shady stuff, but there are times you've gotten wind of a story and you've wanted to keep a lid on it. Or is it a case if you don't report it, someone else will? Wow, so many questions there. Yes, conflict all the time. Conflict all the time. Professional conflicts where I'm a fan, but I feel like I need to do my duty and be critical, for example, of be that a player, a manager, the club more broadly in terms of how it operates. That is always a conflict. Human conflicts, you know, having to criticise people you've met, who you know, who you're going to meet again. You're going to have to talk to them to their face, be it a player, be it a manager, be it an executive. Inevitably in this business, you know, you build a network of contacts. I think people, they stop being acquaintances, they become friends at times, but you have to be objective in your assessment or reporting the news. You cannot be controlled by your contacts, you cannot be led by them. So yeah, it's a constant process of negotiation. It's very, very difficult. I spend a lot of hours cursing that aspect of the job. And I'm a fan, and I am a fan, and I want Arsenal to be the best at everything. I want them to be the best team, have the best manager, have the best players, the best customer service, the most ethical sponsors. I want all those things. You know, it's hard when you have to criticise your club that you love, but it's part of the job. And you're right, holding them to account is the right word, and that's what they would want as well. And I have to say, the club are terrific, you know, in that respect. If I go to them and I say, I've heard this, it's bad news, I'm going to write it, they don't really push back. They understand that as a journalist, the truth is paramount, and they might offer you their perspective on something. They might say, well, this is the reason why that's happened, but they'll never just ask you to not write something. And I really respect that, and it's the way it should be. Sea Lord, loving your work on here, thank you very much. You often mention people at Arsenal or what I'm hearing from the club without breaking any confidences. Can you say any more about how this works? How do you build up and maintain contacts and sources? Presuming you can't name names, but can you say anything about the sorts of roles we're talking about at the club? Well, first of all, there's a communications department. So there are literally people employed to have dialogue with journalists. So who, it's their job to talk to us. If we have a story, to give us if we give them right of reply, they'll be the people that will come back to us. That's their role, right? So that's on record. That is entirely legitimate, and it's part of their job. It's part of my job. Those relationships are key between the comms department and the journalists. Of course, outside of that, in order to be a successful football journalist, you've got to build a broad network. And if you're covering a club specifically, you need to build a network within that club. How do you do that? It takes time. It takes trust. It takes reputation. I think if people know you, know your work, know that you have some authority, know that you're fair in your analysis and your reporting, then generally that makes it easier. The club do not want anyone who works for the club to speak to journalists directly. Understandably, they're very protective about information. So there is a kind of element of espionage to it. But also, you're not only getting things from club employees, you're also getting people from people around those people. Or let's say take a player. You might not have a direct line to a player, but you might know the player's agent, or you might know the player's dad, or you might know the player's second cousin. And football is a small world and gossip travels fast. Such a big misconception whenever I see Arsenal are targeting Declan Rice, say. People say, Arsenal have leaked this. They put that out there. No. Arsenal never want their transfer targets to be out there. It's annoying for the most part for them. What happens is gossip. What happens is Declan Rice tells his agent, who tells another agent in the same office, who tells their mate. And that mate might tell someone who knows me. Or particularly the agent world is rife with gossip. I've heard Arsenal are in for this player. Now, you can't write that because it's gossip, right? You have to check it. You have to find out from multiple sources, is this true? And even then, it's good practice to then go to the club and say, I intend to write this. Do you have anything to say about that? And if it's a transfer story, they'll say no comment. But if it's completely wrong, they might well tell you, if you're doing your work properly and if you've got a good relationship with the comms department. So, this is a similar question from Lachi at The Athletic. What are the steps you take to vet a story before publishing, transfer or otherwise? Multiply sourced. Can't just be one source. Need to have two sources reporting the same information. If they're two independent sources, it's probably true. Even then, I would perform checks with the people involved. So let's say it was a transfer story. I would check with the buying club, the selling club, and the player or the player's camp. They may deny it, or they may no comment it, but if you've got it independently sourced, you might be all right. Generally, I have found in football reporting, no comment is you're onto something, that's correct. If you're wrong, they ring you up and scream at you about it. That's not strictly true, actually, but they're more helpful than that. I think if you're really wrong, it doesn't help anybody for false information to be out there. So I think at some point along those checks, somebody would put you right. But if you've got something multiply sourced, completely independently from each other, those sources, then you're in pretty good nick. But always check. Always check. Not enough journalists check, in my opinion. And that's where you see mistakes made. It's a rigorous process, but it has to be, right? That's how you gain authority and reputation. Andrew Rossland, how did you meet Andrew? Arsblog, through that forum that I discussed. And then we used to chat on IM. We used to chat on MSN Messenger. So there you go. Ollie asks, I want to ask if there's a plan to take your channel across multiple platforms or maybe get guests on your videos. Yeah, I'd love that. It's just a question of time. What's great about this is like, Rocky's asleep now and I can do this. He might wake up, but if I've got Charles Watts here and I'm chatting to him, what am I going to do when he wakes up? So maybe when he's a bit bigger or he's at nursery and stuff, I'll be able to sort of expand in that way. Or when Camille's around. She's not around today. Carl Eccles. I was interested to know how these Aaron Ramsdale style pieces come out. Do the publications seek the player or vice versa? Do the players' club get involved? Yes, that's interesting. Even articles about a player you do for Athletic, are these always done with the player's approval? Well, no, if it's not an interview, we don't have to have a player's approval to write about them, that's for sure. Things like the Aaron Ramsdale Players Tribune, I imagine Players Tribune reached out to him. Probably not even him, probably the people who do his comms for him, or maybe his agent. And, that's how it's set up. If I wanted to interview a player, I'd ask the club. If the club said no, I might try the player's agent and say, listen, I think this would be a good platform for them to get their story across, and see if I could talk them into it that way. It's one of the hardest things about the job, though, getting interview times with players, like one-to-one. You might get them in the mix zone, a bunch of people holding a little voice recorder out, but actually sitting down with the player and chatting to them properly, I've done that so few times. Probably the only time in recent memory I can think of is with Fabio Vieira when he first signed, and he was so nervous because his English, although it was excellent, he was just really nervous about it, that it wasn't a relaxed conversation. Yeah, I'd love to do more of that. I'd love to do that. There's loads of players I'd love to sit down with. Imagine sitting down with Saka for an hour, what you could get done. Oh, man. I'm trying. Harmon Carden. How do you think the football media landscape will shape up in 5 years' time? Don't know. I think it's going to be more and more personality driven. Look at TV punditry, it's increasingly colourful, increasingly it's about the personality. I think it's going to keep going that way. I think there's going to be more crossover between YouTube and television. I think you'll see influencers and YouTubers popping up on TV coverage. I still think there'll always be a place for the written word, for really good stuff. Hope so, anyway. I feel like Twitter is sort of maybe struggling a bit, so I wonder if video is going to become even bigger. Yeah, not sure. Not sure. It's changed so much already, even in my short time working in it. It's not a short time. I wish it was a short time. I'm old now. Hi, James. How do media get ITK? Who from clubs typically feeds or leaks information? Leaks don't really happen. Gossip happens. That's the truest thing I can tell you. Gossip happens. One bloke says to somebody, don't tell anyone this, but this is happening. And that bloke says that to someone else, and that bloke says that to someone else. News travels fast, and clubs share information as well. If one sporting director rings another, then he might say, oh, it's funny you ring, I had Man United on the phone earlier about our left back. Suddenly, that information is in another club and can spread to a whole new network. Information is a currency in football, and people use it to build relationships. That's what I would say. If you want to show value to an agent or to their technical director, whoever you are, if you show you know what's going on in the game. I saw a brilliant quote from Fabrizio Romano where he said, a sporting director rang me up and said he just wanted to meet the guy who knew everything. And I understand that, because as a journalist, when you're in a really powerful position, is if you can be of value to other people in football. Like if you can say to an agent, I've heard this club are interested in your player. Wow, your relationship just got so much better. Or if you can say to a club, I know you're looking at this player, but did you know Chelsea are also in for him? Or whatever it might be. Information is currency. Yeah. Okay, HW Miller. Hi James, congrats on 60k. How much time does covering Arsenal usually take up in your day? Is it similar to a normal job where you dedicate hours, or do you work more on your own clock? It is not normal. It is not like a 9 to 5. Many people at the Athletic do go in, do a 9 to 5 in the office. I just find that if I did that, I'd probably end up working in the evening as well, because there are so many times where news breaks and you've just got to deal with it then and there. I was at a 1-year-old's birthday party this summer, and a transfer story was breaking, and I had to put down give my infant son to my wife and say, I'm sorry, I need to go make a few phone calls. And that any football journalist will tell you countless stories about that. It's not much of a sacrifice really, because wow, what a job, you get to talk and write about football for a living. But it is round the clock, and someone like Fabrizio or someone like David Ornstein, who, let me tell you, up close is the most phenomenal professional, they are working almost 24 hours a day. I'd say about 21 hours a day. They are on. They are on that phone, hammering the phone, speaking to people, finding information, checking it out. It's incredible. N. Diffin says, hi James, long-time fan of you and your work. Wanted to know what the most enjoyable part of transitioning from being primarily an Arsenal fan and commentator to a journalist is for you, and equally, what do you find the most challenging aspect? Most enjoyable part is I love writing about Arsenal. I love talking about Arsenal. I have a format to do that, loads of formats. I have my writing work, I have this YouTube channel, I have the podcast, and people listen to it and engage with it and enjoy it. What could be better than that? That's the best thing. The hardest thing is, I think it's that thing of like when it's going bad and you love Arsenal but they're not winning, or they messed up a transfer, or they've taken on an ugly sponsorship, or whatever it is, and you can't just turn a blind eye to it. You have to engage with it. I mean, where it's pretty tough is if you go and cover an away game. Let's say you go up to St James's Park. Let's say Arsenal, if they win, they're going to get top 4. If they don't win, they're probably not. You go up to St James's Park and you watch the game and it's a disaster, and then you need to spend the next 2 or 3 hours writing about it. You need to do a video about it. You've got to get up in the morning and do a podcast about it. When really, what would be sort of psychologically healthier would be to stick Netflix on, Not having the privilege of being able to be like, do you know what, I'm done with that for now. Now, would I be able to do that? I don't know, I'm getting better at it as I get older, sort of separating emotionally, but that's the tough aspect. This is a really interesting area. I hope those were interesting answers. I haven't really thought about them. I'm answering off the top of my head. But yeah. We'll do more in this area. We'll do more to chatting about football media and what it's like working in football media. There's a whole other section of this Q&A which is like miscellaneous questions about my life, and a couple of questions about football more generally. I want to do that. So I think it'll get less numbers, but I still think it'll be appreciated. So we'll get to that when I get time. Surely Rocky's about to wake up. Right, I better go. All right, see you later, guys. Bye-bye.